There's more risk than reward in this market. I say that stocks at current levels are worrisomely high. I would say the interest rates are absurdly low. I would say that we are unreasonably complacent with respect to the capacities and the judgment of the Federal Reserve System and of central banks generally. And I say that now is a great time not to be caught up in the crowd, which has to invest as if by compulsion.
Aha, with us now, Forbes Media's chairman, Steve Forbes, also former investment banker Carol Roth. And Carol, let me start with you on this and the question of valuation that Mr. Grant brings up. What do you think?
You know, I'm a fan of Jim's, and I think that he makes a lot of fair points when you think about what valuation is as a benchmark for growth. So obviously, we've had a lot of expectations that we are going to have an environment that's going to support that growth and support these expanding multiples and the higher valuations. That being said, with the Fed and not being certain where they're going to go, having to unwind their balance sheet, not knowing how that's going to work out, and also having Congress not being very clear about things like tax reform and healthcare reform that could be a catalyst to the growth, I think that there is some concern that we end up in that 1.5% to 2% that we've been seeing instead of 3 or 4% that would really support expanding valuations. So certainly there is some level of risk versus the opportunity for more reward.
Now, one of the things, Steve, that he said in that Wall Street Week interview that'll air in its entirety this evening is don't get caught up with the crowd, which is, you know, can be good advice. But, you know, watching it today, it's easy to get caught up in something. We have new records plastered all over our screen, and sometimes the crowd is right. What do you think of the environment?
Well, the environment is anticipating still that Congress is going to get a good tax bill through by the end of the year.
Right.
And if that doesn't happen, then you're going to see a real hit. The market would also take a real hit if we ended up getting in a trade dispute with Europe and with Asia, getting in a trade war. That would blow the market up. So there are a lot of uncertainties out there. But some good things are actually happening. You're seeing deregulation moving ahead, not very glamorous, but very important for small businesses. And you're seeing, I think, the White House being very determined. I don't know what's going to happen on health care, but they know, both sides, Congress and the White House, if they don't get a big tax cut through, they're toast next year in these elections.
J.P. Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon fired up, slamming Washington gridlock in his earnings call this morning. Listen.
In spite of gridlock, we'll grow it. We can grow 1.5% or 2%. I don't buy the argument that that we're relegated to this forever. We're not. And if this administration can make breakthroughs in taxes and infrastructure, regulatory reform, we have become one of the most bureaucratic, confusing, litigious societies on the planet. It's almost an embarrassment being an American citizen traveling around the world and listening to the stupid we have to deal with in this country. And, at one point, we all have to get our act together or we won't do what we're supposed to do for the average Americans.
Steve Forbes, what do you think?
I loved it, and I love, too, what he said about lending in that same conference call, that regulations have deprived the economy of about $2 trillion of loans in the last 5 years and what that's done to small and new businesses. And in terms of infrastructure, one of the critical things I think the administration, the Trump administration, is recognizing is they've got to attach legislation that clears away obstacles to building this infrastructure. That you don't have the crazy things like California taking 15 years to build a desalination plant that is 1/3 of the size of what the Israelis do in 2 or 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. Carol, shut up about all this other garbage that's going on, I think is what he's saying. All this other nonsense. Focus on regulatory reform, tax reform, health care, infrastructure. Get done what we need to get done for the average people and stop getting distracted by all the nonsense. Yes?
I am praying at the Church of Jamie Dimon. I'm going to give that one an amen, Melissa. Absolutely. I mean, the average American, the small businesses in this country, they do not care about the sideshow. They want to have the environment that fosters growth. And what we need to understand is that incentives create growth, penalties detract from growth. This is very simple and easy to understand for every American. And somehow Congress and the political people who want to play that sport can't seem to get their heads wrapped around it. So we absolutely need to focus on creating more policy, deregulation, tax reform, all of those things that are going to create those incentives and enable the growth.
Amen. Church of Jamie Dimon. One of those